Hello students, in this lecture we will be discussing the thoughts of Marsilio of Padua. Uh, to begin with, the Marsilio of Padua was born at that point of time when the church and the church authorities always enjoyed an upper hand, and there was no differentiation, a bigger differentiation between church and the state. So both the authorities were in conflict with each other. Before Marsilio of Padua, Saint Thomas Aquinas had tried to give a balance to both these authorities with his very important viewpoint, but he had not been very much influential in separating politics from religion. In the medieval ages, we have already understood in the investiture controversy that religion had always tried to play a foul game when they tried to interrupt and encroach into the authority of secular rulers, the temporal authorities, which was always a bone of contention among both the religious authorities as well as the secular authorities. So, the religious bodies, that is, ecclesiastical bodies, had been enjoying a privilege at the cost of the emperors or the kings. This was brought, uh, um, this was tried to the differences were being trying to minimize by St. Thomas Aquinas when he said that both the authorities had their own domains and they must play such a role which can heal up the society and which makes the people good, and the laws must be made in such a manner which observes the common good. But the credit for divorcing politics from religion really goes to Marsilio of Padua. Marsilio of Padua was born in 1275 and he died in 1343. So there is a gap of almost 100 years between the death of St. Thomas Aquinas and the birth of Marsilio de Padua. Marsilio of Padua is known by his birthplace, Padua, which was a city of Rome. Marsilio of Padua was a physician by nature, and of course, at the same time, he was also a student of philosophy, theology, as well as law. So, and initially, Marsilio of Padua didn't had any significant life of his own. At one point of time, he was also a priest of Padua, that is, he was better known as Canon of Padua. So, he actually was involved in the study of medicine, and because of this, he also studied to a certain extent law, which has made his mind scientific, secular, and very much critical. And he was not at all ready to accept anything on its face value. In fact, he wanted to critically analyze the situation, he wanted to think, he wanted to delve deep into the reason behind any cause, and therefore, for this purpose, he went to Paris and studied different subjects. Later on, he also became a teacher of Paris University, and while he was staying in Paris, his ideas and philosophy also got enriched, and he became an energetic and adventurous person. I told you that he was the person who was responsible for divorcing religion from politics. In fact, he was not very much inclined to accept the authorities of church or the pope or the bishops. He had very strong anti-papal feelings when he was in Paris, and he was also very much uh, critical of all the religious authorities, because he thought that religious authorities have not been doing their job in good faith and they were corrupt by nature. So his his inclination towards the secular authorities made him in fact it urged him to write a book on the ongoing events, and therefore he wrote the famous book Defensor Pacis, that is, in other words, its meaning is Defender of Peace, which was published in 1324. This book contains fierce hatred against the religious authorities, especially the popes and bishops. Uh, Defender of Peace it has been divided into three parts. First part is full of the repetition of Aristotelian books or Aristotelian principles of classification of government, origin of society, as well as the state. Second part deals with the church, functions of the priests of the church, and their relation to the secular or temporal authorities, that is the kings and the emperors and the administration of the state. The volume of third part is not very long, it's a small one. It comprises of 42 conclusions from the theories which he has already mentioned in his first two parts. So the starting point of his analysis is the political society, which originates, as he thinks, which originates in the general recognition of the common needs of the common man or the people or the subjects. So to meet the common necessities, those people whose life was at stake, they build up the foundation of the state. That is, the people laid the foundations of the state, or they established the state. And following Aristotle, he also maintained that family is the smallest unit or primary or the first stage of the state. So family got bigger, union of families and limited demands also were at certain point of time in a very advanced stage became larger, and it was short of common needs. So family gave way to bigger organizations, but the bigger organizations failed to meet all the common needs because it suffered from coordination or cooperation among the members. So state was created for the purpose of maintaining the common needs of the people and providing the people their due. So he, as a vivid reader of Aristotelian books, he also classifies the government into two broad types, as was maintained by Aristotle: the good form of government and the diseased form of government. So the good forms of government were three, and the first was monarchy, second was aristocracy, and the third was, here he changes his word, he says constitutionalism. And the second type, that is the perverted type, consists of tyranny, that is against monarchy, and there is oligarchy, which has already been maintained by Aristotle, that is aristocracy good form, and oligarchy is the perverted form. And the third form, that is bad form of government, was dictatorship. Now the criteria whether the government was good and bad or bad, it was based upon whether the ruler served his own selfish interests or interest of the subject in a reasonable manner. So he actually departs from Aristotle by adding that the common good at which the state must pursue, it must be based upon the consent of the people. Now this thing was not in fact illustrated by Aristotle. That is, he never said that there will be consent of the people. He actually was of the Aristotle was of the view that the monarchy is the best form of the government, though it is not very easy to find a virtuous monarch or a wise person. So he said that collective ruling is one of the best way of ruling. That is, those who are virtuous must come together and they must rule for the goodness, for the virtuous life. So he added one thing, that the consent of the people must be there. So he gives a very important position to the people. Now, uh, what is common benefit and what is not, it is going to be decided by the people. So when he says that the consent of the people is required, that means he says that what is good or what is bad for the entire community has to be decided by the people and not by the ruler. So what somebody has said that the state, in fact it was the, let us discuss the views of Gettel, who says that the state was conceived as a living organism, similar as he has copied the view of Aristotle, intended to secure to men guarantees of order and free development of capacity leading to a general welfare. So the right of the state to to a life or to its own independent of any outside control was the basic principle in Marcellus' thought. That is, the government must not be influenced by anyone from outside. So it must be an independent government, and therefore he also treats that the state is like a natural organization and it exists so that the men can lead a good and virtuous life, and they must attain self sufficiency. So what is the function of the government? So here Aristotle is also being imagined by Marcelo Padua, but he has maintained about something about human nature, which is very much, he's very much anticipating Machiavelli or Hobbes when he says that man is a perverse creature, that men are not good, and the men are self-seeking, violent and aggressive. Now here you can find the glimpse of, that is, he anticipates Machiavelli or Thomas Hobbes, and therefore he understands that human beings regard other men as their rivals, and this particular fact creates an atmosphere of animosity, that is enmity, among all the men. So Marsilio feels that the creation of the state must bring this state of affair to an end. So he says that first duty of the government is the repression, that is, of the perverse will of men. That is, those men who are not good or their thinking is not good, the government must adopt certain ways or techniques so that the men who are bad must be forced to their own work and not to interfere into the works of others. So this perverse nature of man is injurious to the society as a whole. So the government checks such tendencies, evil tendencies, and it creates a congenial atmosphere for development which may provide common good. So there is one another necessity of government, and it is a realization of peace and tranquility. Peace and tranquility will provide security, which are the conditions of progress and prosperity for any society, which means that there must be cooperation among the people, there must be adjustment between them, and general welfare of the community is being observed, which might be made possible with the help of the functioning of the government. So government is required not only for the repression of the perversity but for the organization of cooperation. So that is why the Marsilio has enumerated different functions which has to be performed by the government, and government must consist of certain classes of people such as judges, soldiers, farmers, traders, capitalists, and also priests. We can understand that he was against papal authorities, but he understands that there is a need of priests because the priests have got certain duties and we cannot do away with this religious authorities or religious organization. It must be there. So his conception is, it's quite large, that we can call him what Hanshaw also calls him, that he was the socialist thinker. He thinks in such a manner which mentions much about a holistic pattern of society which may be termed as socialistic. Now, in the next video lecture, we will discuss about his ideas upon law, legislature, and the popular sovereignty, and the divine and human law which he has mentioned primarily. Thank you.